Hey there, Spooky Zoo New England fans. We're back on Facebook Live. This is Zookeeper Celina signing in at a familiar place that you may remember from over a year ago. We were up here on the tropical forest roof. Now, this is a space you can't see from the public area of the zoo. So you may be wondering, where am I? I am up above the exhibits. We have a roof up here where we see our birds and our bats. And today, because National Bat Week is coming up next week and it's spooky season, we're doing a bat-focused Zoo to You up here with our roof cage. Now I want to explain the cage you're seeing behind me right now. This space is actually used to capture our free-flight birds. So here in the tropical forest we have a large bird collection that you'll see winging around over here when you're at the zoo. However, we can't just catch birds out of the air when we need to get them for vet appointments or if they're looking ill. So we have this special space up here where we can catch them when they eat their breakfast. So what we do is we put a little food in the cage. Every day they're used to eating in here. And then when the time is right, if we need to catch somebody, we close the door behind them, kind of like a tooth on a door handle. Boop, we pop them in, and then they can go to the vet, come back out, join their friends. So that's what you have here. But this cage is also awesome because it's where we feed our bats. So it's about 3 p.m. right now here at Zoo New England, and the bats are out and about. This is our straw-colored bat population. You may be used to seeing our Ruwenzori bats downstairs in our exhibit, which you can see almost all the time when you're here, usually with a red tint. But up here, it's just about to turn night, so the straw bats are coming out for dinner, or breakfast if you're a bat. Now today, because it's October, we're getting closer to Halloween, I want to bust some bat myths that you may have heard. I don't know if you can see it. Is anyone behind me? So what we've got right here, we've got their food, we've got some bats, we've got a little bit of apple juice, and that leads us to myth number 1, that all bats drink blood. Now I know that bats can be very scary for people. They're freaky, they fly, they have little tiny eyes. They're actually pretty cute, and they're really, really important for ecosystems because they're pollinators, especially straw-colored fruit bats. Fruit bats eat fruit. You can see we have a whole bucket of apple juice here just for the bats. This little one's thinking about it. Come on down anytime, you're welcome. There's the food over there is a mix of cantaloupe, apple, grapes, banana, and then a special chow that most of our animals get at the zoo, different formulated chows that are perfect for them, kind of like dog kibble or cat kibble that you would feed your pets. So myth number 1, bats drink blood. Not these guys. Yes, there are vampire bats, and that's how the whole craze got started with the vampire bats. However, these guys are fruit bats, so they eat specifically fruit. And the way they eat the fruit is they crush it up in their mouths, and then they suck all the pulp out of it, which is why we supplement with the juice. So this is just apple juice concentrate that I've just mixed up. They're a little shy because I'm standing here, except for that guy. You coming over? Nope, he left. But they love to come and drink the juice, and they actually hang right here, and they just sip from the bucket. Myth number 2 is that bats get in your hair. I'm not really sure how this one started, and I don't have that much hair, but I can tell you that I've never had a bat in my hair up here on the roof. I have been accidentally pooped on, but only once. So really, the odds are pretty good. Bat myth number 3 is that they all have rabies. This is a very common question that I get asked down in the public area. Do your bats have rabies? First of all, here at the zoo, we have great health care for all our animals. We have a terrific vet team with vet techs, doctors. They make sure all of our animals here at the zoo are up to date on vaccinations, get annual exams, and are healthy. So no, there is no rabies here at the zoo. But the likelihood of a bat getting rabies in the wild is about the same as your dog getting rabies, a squirrel getting rabies, or a raccoon getting rabies. I think we're afraid of these things because they're wild, but rabies doesn't just show up. It has to be infected. So don't worry about bats with rabies, especially not here at the zoo. Now you may be wondering, where can I see the straw-colored bats when I come to Franklin Park Zoo? That's a good question. So it's hard to tell up here on the roof, but I'm actually situated between the tapir exhibit and the hippo exhibit. Above each of these exhibits, there are areas where the roof goes up to the center, and there's some mesh where the bats hang out. So currently our bats are choosing to roost above the hippo habitat. So when you're looking at Ptolemy and Eno and Cleo on their 2 habitats in the tropical forest, if you look at the space between the 2 habitats and then follow your eyes up straight to the roof line, you'll see all the bats roosting up there. Straw-colored bats are extremely social. They can live to up to 1 million bats in a single colony in the wild. Here at the tropical forest, we have about 50 to 60. They do have babies, generally in the summertime months. And we know that because when the bats fly over us, we can see the pups riding on their mom's bellies, which is really a special treat for us when we get to see a baby bat. You can see they're getting comfortable with us. They're starting to flock in. So we've designed, which is actually very helpful because the bats use their claws to hang upside down. That's not a myth. Bats do hang upside down. Another myth that we've heard about bats is that they are blind. They can't see. And some of us know that some bats echolocate. They use sound and they bounce it off items in their space so that they don't crash. Straw-colored bats actually do not echolocate, which is a good answer to our question of are bats blind? No. Again, I've never had a bat in my hair. I've never been hit by a bat up here. They have very good sight. They just have small eyes, and they do operate mostly in the dark. These bats, obviously, they live in the zoo. Their cycle is a little different, so they know at 3 o'clock. I'd like to see if there are any bat myths in the chat that we have or any questions about bats. I'd be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we'll just keep talking.
We have 2 questions. One was how many do we have here?
Great question.
How long do they live?
Okay, the question was how many bats do we have at Franklin Park Zoo? So straw-colored bats, which are flying around us now, we have between 50 to 60. We take a count every Friday. Sometimes it's a little difficult because they're all bunched up, but that's about the average that we know. The other question is how long do straw-colored fruit bats live? And I have to tell you, I don't know the answer to that question. So we'll get back to you on that one in the chat later. Any new questions in the chat? Feel free to type in the chat if you're watching right now and you have a burning bat question or just a spooky ooky Halloween zoo question. Feel free to type it in the chat.
What threats do they face in the wild?
Great question. The question was what threats do straw-colored bats face in the wild? So just like most of the animals at the zoo, the straw-colored bat faces issues with deforestation and humans encroaching on their territory. So these bats are found in Africa, and they face a lot of issues because obviously they need tree space to hang out and roost. And especially if there's a lot of them in the roost, they need a lot of space to hang out. So when humans are encroaching on population, just like we are in many parts of the world, we end up taking spaces from the bats. Another problem in Africa is that sometimes bats are eaten as bushmeat, which is when people eat animals that are considered exotic or wild because they are unable to find meats that are considered more domesticated. So that's a problem. We do have bats here in North America. We have the little brown bat, the big brown bat. Bats everywhere across the world are facing also an issue with a fungus called white nose fungus. I'm not sure if it's in America yet. It might be. We'd have to ask our bat researcher friends. But what that fungus does is it actually grows over their nose and it makes it difficult for the bats to breathe. So that's a big threat to bat populations. And bat researchers have been tracking that where it is. You have to be very, very careful because bat researchers use items called mist nets, which are these very fine nets that they set up across expanses in the wild. And the bats, when they're flying at night, because they're fine, can look at their bodies, check them out. The researchers have to be very, very careful with these nets because if you're researching in, let's say, South America, and then you come back to North America with an infected net, you could cause a huge problem. So our researchers are experts, they know what they're doing, and they're helping us figure out what we can do to stop white nose.
Martha was wondering if you can mix 2 types of bats together.
The question was, can we mix 2 types of bats together? I'm sure in the wild, bats crisscross locations often. Obviously, especially with deforestation, they only have so much space. Here at the zoo, we do not crisscross our bats. So the straw-colored fruit bats out here are the ones that are free flight, as we would call them, out in the tropical forest, flying over my head right now. And then we have our Ruwenzori bats, which are in our bat habitat, which is the one with red lights that you'll see. There's only 6 bats in that habitat, so that's a much smaller space. They still roost together. They're very communal. And then if you're up north at Franklin Stone Zoo, we have our Cebus bats over there, which they are very, very small, and I think we have up in the hundreds of those animals. So if you're at Stone Zoo and you're a bat lover, please go check out the bat cave up there.
Natalie's wondering, I thought bats only came out at night. Do they fly around tropical forests during the day?
That's a great question. Natalie's asking us, why are the bats out right now? It's not even dark. Natalie, you're right. Bats are nocturnal, especially these straw-colored fruit bats. But it's feeding time here at the zoo. Zoo animals, just like our gorillas, our tapirs, have a very good internal clock, and they love to eat, so they know exactly when they're going to get fed. So around 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, the bats begin to come out. In the middle of the summer, when it's brighter for longer at the zoo, we feed them a little later so they get used to that. But usually around 3:30, 4 o'clock, the straw-colored bats are roaming around. But you are right, they are nocturnal. They do stay up for all night. So when the rest of tropical forest has gone to sleep, these bats are still swirling around even when we're not here.
Catherine wants to know, what are your favorite bats?
Catherine wants to know, what are my favorite bats? Well, Catherine, I only know these straw-colored fruit bats and our Ruwenzori bats because I work here in tropical forest. But I was saying earlier that this is one of my favorite parts of tropical forest. I love coming up here in the afternoon. Nothing gets better than watching the bats drink their apple juice. I also love apple juice, so I feel like we're kindred spirits. I hope you're getting a good look at this bat sucking up the juice. He's a hungry guy. I love the bats just because they are so misunderstood. Going back to our myths, myth-understood bats. A lot of people are scared of them, think they're creepy. I love to be able to talk to people in tropical forest about our bats and tell them not to be scared, that these guys are awesome, awesome pollinators, great ecosystem engineers, and we love working with them here in tropical forest. Any last questions in the chat before we wrap it up? All right, well then I want to say from the bats, the apple juice, and I, happy upcoming Halloween. Stay spooky. We'll see you at all our events here in tropical forest for the spooky season and National Bat Week. From the bats and Celina, stay batty.